Before starting this tutorial, make sure that you have the proper session open. Make sure it is the Beat Drop Live Intro 2 bass session, and you should be good to go. So in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to add a bass line to our existing drum track. And the way that we get started is by adding a new MIDI track. We can go up to Create, Insert MIDI Track, and we're going to toggle over here to our device, Live Device folder, and we're going to take a simpler instrument and we're going to drag it either on top of the MIDI track or into this section here. Another way to do it is by simply, I'm just going to delete this, another way to do this is simply making sure a MIDI track is selected, double click the simpler instrument and it will load right onto that MIDI track. And let's go ahead and Command R and rename this track to bass. Let's keep our things nice and organized. You'll notice here it's got one cell that you can drop samples onto. Let's navigate with our file browser to our desktop or wherever we downloaded this thing and go to the Live Intro folder into the Samples folder. Not the drum samples, but just the samples. It should say Mini Moog Saw. Drop that onto the Drop Sample Here section. Now if you have a MIDI keyboard or a controller of some type, you can sample by playing the keys and you'll hear the sound sampled across the keyboard. Another way, if you don't have a MIDI controller, if you hit caps lock in Ableton Live, the keyboard then turns into an actual musical keyboard, and it's handy in a tight pinch if you're on an airplane or in a tight spot and you don't have room for a MIDI controller. So let's move up to this empty MIDI clip in our bass track and double click. Again, it makes a 1-bar MIDI clip just like we did in our drums. However, this time we want to make a 2-bar clip. So the way that we do that is we go down to this parameter under length and we click and drag up till it says 2. So if I click play here on our clip, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, you get the idea. So it's 2 bars that we've made, and that's what we want. I'm simply going to use my mouse to click in the notes. As long as this preview button is clicked, you'll be able to preview the notes as you go down the piano roll. And because I know what samples are coming and what will fit, I'm going to double click here on this F# 3. When you draw notes with your arrow, you'll notice that they get drawn on dependent upon the grid that you've set up. If you right click and I was to change this to 8th notes, you'll notice when I click they'll actually lock into 8th notes. I'm going to move it back for fun to 16th notes, and I'm going to now take some of these and move them around to make a small little progression. If you select to the right of the note, you can drag it out. And I'm going to hold down the Option and click and drag. So I just went on beats 1, beats 3, the start of, and beats 1 of 3 and 3 of bar 2. So it sounds like this. So really simple. Let's extend these out. Now I'm finding that this bass line is a little too high. I'd like it to drop it down an octave. So I'm going to select all of these notes and I'm simply going to drag down to F# 2. So that sounds a little bit meatier, definitely a little bit better. Okay, let's try another variation, just something very simple. A little more syncopated. We're going to double click on this empty MIDI clip. I'm going to change the length to 2 bars. And this time I'm going to play it in with my MIDI keyboard that you cannot see. Make sure that you've armed the track by clicking this button down here. Now you can test your MIDI controller and make sure it works. And I'm going to hit the play button and it's going to be waiting for me to enter some notes. So here we go. Okay, so that was just one pass. It's a little bit sloppy, But let's see if we can quantize this and fix this. So I am going to right click and I'm going to change my grid to eighth notes, and I'm going to select everything, right click, and I'm going to say quantize settings. Now we can tell this to quantize to our grid, our current grid, or to eighth notes. Either one would work. I want to do it to eighth notes, or current grid would work. And just the start's fine, and 100%. So it should snap it to exactly where I want it to go. And if I press play, it's right on. So that's fine. That's just a simple idea that we'll use later on. So let's keep track of our clips just so we know what's going on. Let's go to this first one, click it once, and Command R. Let's call it bass, I don't know, 1. And let's rename this one to bass 2. This is our simple bass line. This is our more complex, not complex, but more of a progression. And let's review now what we've gone through and actually done. So we simply made a new MIDI track. We dragged out a simpler instrument. We dropped a sample onto the simpler. We then made 2 MIDI clips. We used both the keyboard and our mouse to input MIDI notes. We learned a little bit about quantizing them to the grid, and that's about it. The next video, we're going to add some synth parts and start adding a melody to this thing.